The Failure Hypothesis is a Meledra digital production. If you're interested in making business content with interest or want to tell your story in a future episode, you can contact us at info@meledradigital.com.
Hi, my name is Vivian Chan, and you're listening to The Failure Hypothesis. Over the course of this podcast series, I'm going to be talking to some of the most interesting leaders from all around the world. From Brazil to the UK, from India to America, all about failure. We'll be testing the simple hypothesis that radical honesty about failure is the secret to success. But is it really that simple? Sometimes, is it better to just keep moving forward? Why can't we just think like a rocket scientist when it comes to failure? To help us find out the answer to these questions and more, we've assembled a dream team of guests that includes the chief scientist of a global tech company, the president of a major record label, a private equity titan, and a Webby-award winning podcaster. For new listeners who want to learn more about the failure hypothesis and the timeless mission to get the leaders of today and tomorrow all talking more openly about failure, please check out episode 1, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's guest is the founder of a phenomenally successful startup with one of the most unique origin stories you're ever likely to hear. He and his fellow founders turned his father's unusual career change into a globally recognized brand and multi-million-dollar business. They did this with no investors, zero capital, and providing their product for free. Just a great idea and individual talent combined with savvy marketing and branding. It is a track record that would turn most founders green with envy and have investors reaching for their checkbooks. I'm not talking about a hot news tech startup today, but a podcast which has been described by the Sunday Times as a cultural phenomenon. That podcast is called My Dad Wrote a Porno. And the creative visionary behind it, writer, producer, director, Jamie Morton is my guest today.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
It's exciting being on another pod. I know, this is great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Let me start off with some amazing jaw-dropping stats.
Oh God. Okay.
Just a little 350 million download, critically acclaimed HBO special, live performances seen by over 100,000 people with venues like the Royal Albert Hall and Sydney Opera House. Oh, I'm Australian, so you know. The first non-American podcast to win the Oscars of the podcast world, the prestigious Webby-award, celebrity fans like Dan Levy and Emma Thompson, and the list goes on and on and on. So I'm just going to keep that one short, if that's
thanks,
okay.
Yeah, 'cause I'm getting all blushed over here. No, it's exciting to hear it back.
It is no exaggeration to say that Porno has been part of a vanguard of shows that has revolutionized the podcast industry. Less well known is Jamie's work as an in-demand digital producer, working on projects ranging from The X Factor to Vice documentaries. He's been at the cutting edge of digital entertainment since his early days, and there hasn't always been an easy place, and that's what we're going to find out a little bit more today. As a relative newcomer in the podcast world, it is my honor to have you as a podcast royalty like Jamie on the show. And I'm delighted to be able to give our listeners the chance to hear an incredible story. So, shall we?
Let's go. I'm ready. Yeah.
So welcome to the show, The
Thanks.
Failure Hypothesis. And so today we're really going to just listen in and explore a little bit of your world and what you want to share about failures. Mm-hmm. Are you ready to go back?
Oh, I'm ready. Come on. I'm strapped in.
So where do you want to start?
Well, I guess I should really start at university. That's when my kind of creative journey started, as it were. Because I didn't have a great time at school. I kind of was a little bit of an oddball. And then when I went to university and did a creative degree, I met so many amazing...
Where did you go?
I went to the University of Leeds. Mm-hmm. Which is great, and immediately joined the student TV station, which is pretty geeky.
Was it always your passion?
Creating I didn't actually know at that time what I wanted to create in terms of a medium. I just wanted to tell stories, really. Yeah. And I figured that university was a great place to explore and experiment and meet like-minded people, exercise your creative muscles in new ways. And that was really kind of, even more than the course, was why I wanted to go to university, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I was lucky. I was the last year that got in before top-up fees in this country, so I kind of could justify going financially. So joined the student TV station, made loads of really terrible student television.
That's the fun of it.
Exactly. But really learnt my craft, learnt what I was doing, learnt how to edit, shoot, direct, everything, and met loads of creative people, two of whom were Alice and James, who I would 10 years later go on to make My Dad Wrote a Porno with. So it was a really fruitful time for me. And it was kind of a real high point in my life and I guess it's true of everyone at that age. You think anything's possible, right?
Yeah,
you think
the world is your oyster.
Yeah, and you have that naivety of youth, and you think I can just do anything. And so when I graduated, I moved to London, got a really cool job pretty quickly, and I thought, that's the hard bit, right? Going from university to work, that's that bumpy kind of transition that people kind of get a little bit lost in. And I was like, I've nailed that. This is great. And then everything kind of came crashing down. And I kind of became a husk of a man, to be honest with you. Yeah, but it's all good now.
Yeah, well, let's dive into a little bit of that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why did it go down?
So I was really lucky because I graduated in 2008, which, that was the financial crash year, which wasn't great. But it was also a time where the media industry was really diversifying and a lot of new content was kind of being invested in for the first time, namely digital content. And they really needed people who had a broad skill set, basically, who could shoot, edit, produce, direct, distribute, even market. You kind of had to be a bit of everything. And my experience at university making all these shows was the perfect kind of background to go into a company and say, right, I can make something for your digital platform for X amount of money. And we were pretty lucky in that James, Alice and I all got a job together. The first job we ever got. Yeah, the same show. I don't know if you remember a little social network called Bebo.
Oh,
Vivian, do you remember that? Are you old enough? Maybe not.
I think I remember the logo.
Yeah, it was kind of the father to Facebook and all of that sort of stuff. And it was huge in Ireland. Weirdly.
Why?
I don't know, but they loved it. And it was like a lot of our audience was Irish. And actually, to be fair to Bebo at that time, they really heavily invested in online content and online original content. Like they made their own TV shows, they made their own magazine shows, and we were commissioned through a company called RDF to make a kind of kids magazine show, basically called B-Box.
Which sounds fun.
It was really fun. It was a really fun job.
It's a great job, right?
Yeah.
The project sounds amazing.
It was, do you know what? Actually, the foreshadowing of B-Box was actually a show called A Message from Earth, which was what we actually got hired to do, which was like a 4-month contract of compiling loads of messages that Bebo users had sent in that we were going to then send into space. To the nearest planet to Earth that could conceivably hold life, called Gliese 581c. I'm sure you've heard of it. And so we went to the Ukraine as like a little team of, there were like 6 of us, and we went to a big telescope in Ukraine and we beamed these messages in binary form into space. They're still on their way there now, actually. So
this is not a marketing campaign.
I don't know what it was. Honestly, our boss was like this mad genius. He's called Ollie Madgett. He's wonderful. He lives in Australia now, actually. And it was his kind of brainchild. I'm not sure what he wanted to get out of it so much as just having fun and talk to it. Kind of become a news story in 20 years when we are at war with Gliese 581c.
So you sent me. Everything's like you sent me.
Exactly. But that was a kind of a successful project for Bebo, and they decided to use that team to then make a magazine show called B-Box, which was really successful and did really, really well, and it was really fun, and it was stressful, it was hard work. It was 20 weeks as a run, and I was shooting it, editing it every week, and had the best time. Alice and James were the presenters of it because they are very good at that sort of thing. And it was just the best job in the world. And I met loads of cool people and got very drunk and just had the best balance of
Work-life balance.
Yeah, and for the first time in my life, I had money in my pocket, but I still had that kind of university mentality of let's go out, let's meet people, let's have fun in this new city in London, the place that I'm from, Manchester. I'd always dreamt of living in London and succeeding in London.
Like, I've made it.
Yeah, completely. And so Bebox ended, and they were like, we want to recommission it, and we were like, yes, this is great. And so we all had like a month off, and we were going to come back and do season 2.
How long was the whole first season?
It was about 20 weeks, so yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Quite a long slog, but fun. And I was young enough to be able to do that. Just thinking back to the way I lived my life then actually is exhausting. There was 1 month when I didn't ever not go out for a night. Yeah, and I still went and did my work.
That
it was
is
insane.
intense.
Yeah, it really was. But in this kind of month hiatus, Bebo was bought by I think it was AOL. I could be wrong. And they, in their wisdom, saw no future in online content. Isn't that insane? And so they canned everything, and they said,
during that 1 month while you were off.
So when we were away, they basically decommissioned the whole online content division of Bebo, and we got a phone call from the production manager and said, "Yeah, you're out of the job." Back. Yeah,
heartbreaking.
And that was the moment when I was like, "Oh fuck, I have to actually get a job," because it had been such a smooth transition and it was so fun, and I was like, "Oh crap, this is the hard bit now. What do I do? How am I going to pay my rent? I need to, do something that wasn't what I expected." And so that was kind of when things started to take a bit of a turn.
But Alice and James were in the same boat with you, right?
They were in the same boat. Alice was very ambitious, and she, towards the end of Bebox, had kind of felt that she wanted to pursue presenting properly. Yeah. And so she'd got herself an agent, and she was starting to do some stuff. So she was fine, actually, and she became very successful very quickly because she's super talented. And James was... because he was the producer, or one of the producers of Bebox, he found it easier to transition into the workforce. Whereas with me, I was a shooter editor. I didn't have any contacts really in the industry. Everything that I was going to be doing would be really short-term contracts anyway. There wasn't kind of a place to work on a production, and there just wasn't the appetite or basically the infrastructure to support digital production. So I had no credits in actual TV. So it was really hard to kind of find my place in that burgeoning industry. And it's really interesting now seeing how digital content has exploded, and it's all anybody wants, and it's how people consume everything now. But back in 2008-9, like, it was really primitive, and there were no budgets, and there was no belief, and there was, we were really seen as like pests, like pesty kind of like little flies on productions, and people were like, why are you here? Get out of our way, you're being really annoying. And we're like, we're actually here to do a job, it's quite important. So I just kind of scratched myself a living and just did everything and anything. I mean, I remember doing literally anything. There was one job that I did. I had to go to Camberley, which I couldn't even point to that on a map.
Where's that?
I honestly don't know. I had to go to Camberley to film signage in a shopping centre for a brand, and I had to because I didn't have any kit, so I was like 21. So it's like hire in a camera and get a train down there and like shoot this stuff. And then obviously once I'd paid all of my costs, I think I might have made like 50 quid. And it was just days like that for like 2 years. And there were a few bigger jobs, and there were a few, things that were more high profile, or, actually making something of worth. But a lot of it was kind of that sort of short-term stuff, which, I'm obviously very grateful for, but it wasn't really the sort of stuff that I had envisaged producing when I set out.
Not the same passion graduating, from university that Jamie was thinking about.
Yeah. I was there with my first class honours degree thinking, come on.
Bring on.
No one ever asked me if I even went to university, let alone what I got. I was like, this is a scam. What is this? This is supposed to be worth something. It's because I pursued a completely
Should be wearing that
creative
when
industry.
went out, wore our first class degree t-shirt, you got to take the photos and signage.
If you want to film signage in a shopping centre, get a first class honours degree. That's what you need.
You heard it here first.
Exactly. And I was...
So you were a bit lost.
And it was hard, and I had no money, and I had no it was just hard to kind of transition mentally into like, okay, I'm doing this for now, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously in my early 20s, but how do I get to the point where I want to be, which is making my own stuff? And so I actually started writing a project with my friend Tom, who is still my writing partner to this day, and that was a real kind of anchor in my life at that point. Of even though it didn't really, we didn't really have any expectation of it going anywhere in terms of it even being commissioned. It was a TV show. It was just something to kind of put our creative energy into, and having something to motivate ourselves, and just having that kind of consistent project that was outliving any of our day-to-day work, because he was also struggling in TV, and he was more successful than I was at that time, but we were both kind of just working out what the hell we could do. And I remember,
and this little project was like after work, on the weekends?
Yeah, absolutely. If we were working, then it would be after work. If not, it was just, the days and the weeks that we were existing. And we worked really hard on it, actually. It's funny, we actually re-looked at it the other day, and we were like, this isn't actually terrible. Even though it was like 10 years ago. And
how long was that project that went on?
Oh, we did that for like 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was really fun. It was more just to kind of keep us sharp, really, and also to do something together, and to kind of be creative in a time that we felt we had no outlet to be creative. But I remember we were sat writing it one day in his flat in Brixton, and I got a call from someone that I didn't actually used to work with them, but I knew them through somebody that I used to work with, who said that they just commissioned a brand new comedy show, like a sitcom, that was starring two of my biggest comedy idols from an American TV show that I was just obsessed with. Me and Wack were, Tom Wackett, my writing partner Wack, we were both obsessed with it. And so she called me and she was like, we're looking for someone to do the kind of like the EPK stuff, the kind of behind the scenes stuff, the interviews, all that sort of thing. Would you be up for doing it? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I would absolutely kill for this opportunity. Thank you so much. And I said, can I get an assistant to kind of help me with my shoot? And she said, yeah, of course. So I got Wack on board, and we were like, oh my God, we're going to, meet our idols. We're going to work on this amazing show. And so we were told to be somewhere. The first day filming was on location, actually, I remember. And we had no real access, so it was just kind of, I was just like grabbing stuff, filming stuff, but not really knowing what I was really capturing. So I was like, we'll just, first day, ease in, be in awe of these two amazing people. And I remember there was, between shots, they were kind of improving a line for part of the script, and I just was like, this is just being up close and personal with like these two titans of comedy, like seeing how they work together. And it was just the most amazing day, and it was like really exhilarating. And me and Matt were just like, can you believe that we've like been on a set with these people? We were like 22 or whatever. It was so cool. And then the next day, I think we must have had a day off, because it was a Friday the next day, I remember. And I got a phone call at like lunchtime from the person that had called me up about the job, and she basically fired me over the phone. Yeah. And I was like...
But did she say that the show was continuing? And you
yeah. The show was hugely successful. It was me that was shit. And she basically was like, look, it's not working. Like, the rushes have been sent to the post house. I don't think it's good enough. Which, Yeah,
but you had no guidance. You didn't know what.
Well, this is the thing. And I was 22 years old, and this was a good lesson for me to learn, actually, because I'd had this background in digital production, and I was kind of filming it, editing it. I would be shooting knowing how it was going to cut together in my head. Yeah. So I would shoot accordingly, and I would leave the camera running when I was like going from setup to setup. And what I learned was that when you work in a real industry like this, you shoot something and then you give it to somebody else to put together. They don't know what you've been imagining in your head.
Yeah.
They can't cut together your vision. All they can do is say, what the fuck is all this shit? This is a load of crap. And to be fair, they were right. It was really badly filmed, but I was also like, you know, can
I do something
can you
about
give
it?
me like
Yeah.
a second chance? Like, let's have, like, tell me everything I'm doing wrong. And they were like, no. And I got really desperate on this because I was like, not only is this a huge opportunity for me personally, creatively, I really needed the money. Like, I was really, really skint. Like, I mean, beyond poor. We were living in this tiny house in Tooting. There were 1 million of us in it. My bedroom was like in the old dining room that didn't even have a door that closed properly.
One of those
It was
renovations.
Yeah, and I was like, I need. And I remember our rent was £444 a month. I remember
For the whole house.
No, each. They were making
what?
an absolute fucking killing out of us. Yeah, outrageous when you think about it. It was yeah. Anyway, but I just was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. Like, this is, and I was begging with her on the phone. I was like, please. I was crying. I mean, really humiliating. And she said to me, she was like, look, this is really hard for me. And I was like, I'm sure it is, and I'm sure it is difficult firing people. I would hate to fire someone, but like, I'm pretty sure it's harder to be the person that's being fired than the person doing the firing. And it just was really kind of sobering, and just the finality of it, of just like, no, like, there's nothing I could do. It was taken completely out of my hands. I couldn't even, you know, say, okay, can I just do the next couple of days for free, and then, and if it's not working, then okay. Or it just was a complete shutdown, and it just, for me, led me into this spiral of just, I mean, if I'm being fired from
when you
from
had
this.
such high expectations, right?
Yeah, I thought, this is gonna be great. This is like my dream job, and it was for a day, and then I got fired. It felt personal in a way that nothing up until that point had, because this was about my performance. This wasn't about a show not getting renewed, or it wasn't about, you know, something not coming back for another season or whatever. This was about me failing to deliver. And I take my, you know, my craft, my creative tools, like, incredibly seriously. Like, and I've got a really strong work ethic, and I felt like I was doing the best I could, and for it to not only be not good enough, but to be actively detrimental to a production, which it clearly was if they weren't even going to give me a second chance, like, really kind of hit home to be like, right, I'm pretty lost here. And I just remember hanging up the phone after begging and crying. Just, I mean, full humiliation. I was that desperate, because I've got I have a certain amount of self-respect, believe it or not. And I just went, like, balls to the wall. Like, I don't care what you think of me in this moment. I need this so badly. Yeah. Emotionally, financially, you know, creatively, everything. That and she just hung up the phone, and I just remember looking out of the window and just thinking, I'm fucked. I'm literally fucked. Because I didn't have any work coming in. I was clearly shit at the work that I was doing.
That was your narrative, right?
Right.
That was the narrative that you were playing yourself.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. And I just broke down, and I just was like, this is awful. It was a friend's birthday party that night, and I didn't go. Yeah. I mean, that's how bad it was. I don't not go to parties. Like, you don't know. Like, I will, if there's a drink and a person, I'm there. Yeah. And one of my housemates at the time just took me out in the garden, and he was like trying to console me, and I was like, it's not about this. I mean, it is about this one job, but it's also not about that. It's about the 2 years that had been running up to that, and just feeling completely like I was pushing my dreams up a hill. Yeah. But at least I felt that those dreams were valid. Yeah. And it was like having them just, like, not only just fall down the hill, but like run me over on the way down there. Yeah. And it's like, there's only so much kind of self-belief you can have until you start thinking, well, am I the delusional person here? Am I good at this? Because I believe I have talent, but if I don't, and if everything around me is telling me that I don't, then am I just like one of those delusional people on the X Factor that can't sing but thinks they can and are shocked when they're told that they're tone deaf? Am I that person? There's a very thin line between ambition and self-belief and delusion. And those lines got completely blurred to me in that moment. And I was like, I don't get it, do I? And then it's like, well, this is embarrassing that you think that you can do this.
But isn't that really interesting, right? Because it is actually, from what I was hearing, and I've not exactly in the same situation, but as entrepreneurs, we go through this, and I feel like those games at like Time Zone and stuff, those little hedgehogs just come up and someone keeps bopping you down. I feel like that happens all the time whenever you feel like it, and because your story was that you were working so hard in the last 2 years trying to make ends meet, having this other creative side on your project, building stuff up, and you were actually shaping who you were. Right? You were shaping yourself as your identity.
Understanding who I was, exactly. And that was all tied up with that struggle and that self-perception of who I was. It was being defined by the work I was doing or not doing or wanting to be doing. And when it was told that it wasn't good enough, I wasn't good enough. You took
it very much like, yes, exactly. Yeah. And that is funny how the world works like that, right? Especially with the creative industry. But also, I would say, even for any kind of like, especially say investors and other kind of like business leaders in that sense, where often you seek approval when you're thinking, hang on, this is who I am. My passion is this. So therefore, it's not just about work. It is me as an identity.
It's not work. It's who
me
you are.
As Jamie, right?
Yeah.
And for someone to tell you, nah, you're not good enough.
Yeah. You're not even worth a second chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You're literally worth nothing.
With not any guidance, no constructive feedback, nothing. Just like, nah, I just don't like you. Like, it felt like that, right?
It really did. And I was, I was clinically depressed then for a long time, like maybe like 2 years. Which was really hard.
Yeah. And how did you kind of navigate through that?
Well, I was in denial for a long time. My friends were amazing at kind of like trying to hold me together, but it got so bad that I just began to like destroy every relationship in my life, really, until
you were just shutting people out.
Yeah, until I then sought professional help, which was wonderful. But it was the straw that broke the camel's back for me to be like, I don't believe in myself. I'd always had self-belief. I don't know where it came from. Yeah. I guess, a secure family and, whatever. But like, it was the first time that had really just been not only shaken, but just kind of demolished. And it felt really like there was no way back. Mm-hmm. I remember flying to, my parents were on holiday and they were like, why don't you come out and see us? And I was like, And my friend Lee, my housemate at the time, he called them and he was like, just to pre-warn you, he's in a pretty dark place, and bless him for doing that, because I think they needed that heads up, and they were a bit like, ooh, okay.
So they haven't seen you in this?
No, they'd never seen me like that. And they'd always kind of, I've got 3 sisters and there's me, and they kind of always assumed that I would be kind of self-sufficient, and I was, and it was all fine. But I think there comes a point where you confront for so long until you just don't have the energy to front anymore, and it was them seeing that and being like, oh, okay, maybe we need to just divert some attention to this one.
Because the self-confidence that you have and that you were exuberant to everyone, that's what your family remembers you as, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's so much a part of it as well. There is an expectation in the media industry that, you especially as a freelancer, you have to be on your A game every single day. Yes. You don't get a day off to be like, I'm hungover today, or I'm a bit ratty today, or whatever. Like, it is your first day at school every day of your career. And that's really hard to sustain. Like, it's really not a healthy way to present yourself, because everyone has bad days, and you shouldn't constantly be having to prove your worth every single day to a whole new group of people with wildly differing expectations of you. But that's the industry. It's a privilege to work in it, and I think you're somewhat aware of that when you start out, but it becomes incredibly clear quickly as you kind of navigate your way through an industry that is so overly subscribed that that if you fuck up for one day, you're out. You know, there's always somebody else who can
Which
do your
means
job.
it's very hard to find the authentic outlets of channels and support groups, right?
Absolutely. And everyone who is your friend in the industry is also a competitor in a weird
Exactly.
way, you know, and it's like...
That's very lonely.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it can be. I think what it kind of really said to me was that you have to start making your own future in a creative sense. And, you know, and I'd started doing that with Tom, with our show that we were writing. But, you know, we were in our early 20s. That was never going to get picked up realistically. But it was just something that we wanted to do to exercise that muscle. But it kind of... Once I started to kind of pick myself up a bit more and understand and kind of accept my own failings in the 3 years that had led up to that breakdown, was to be like, you need to take responsibility for yourself. Yeah. This is an industry that you can make your own luck if you work hard enough and you apply yourself. And so it kind of became increasingly clear that my pathway to success and meaningful success for me was making something on my own terms, because I was like, there's one person that can't fire me, and that's me. I was like, well, let's try and make something that can, you know, sustain not only my creative ambition but also a lifestyle. And
I love it. I love how the mentality shifted, right?
Yeah,
Of
100%.
going, no one else can fire me except me.
Yeah.
Which means I just need to create the platform to make me shine.
Yeah, which
right?
sounds so easy, doesn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
well, hang on, let's create something that I could do. And then you're like, oh, fuck, I've got to actually do that. What the fuck could that be? And it did take a while, you know. My dad wrote Porno, that started in 2015. So it took a long time to kind of find the right vessel. So I was trying different things, like making stuff, like writing stuff.
But before you were through that journey, when you were still a little bit lost, you were talking about therapy and
Yeah.
your friends.
Yeah.
And are you open to share a little bit more about how therapy helped with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, everyone's pathway is different and their own. I think I realised that I had associated a lot of my personal success through my professional success. And I'm a very ambitious person and I'm a very creative person, and those two things are quite different. When you have such high expectations of yourself, it's really hard to meet those expectations when they're all that is motivating you. They are what your self-worth is built on. Yeah. And I think for me, like failing and not even failing, but just not succeeding in a way that was by my standards.
Yes, your expectations.
Yeah, was defining my whole life, which was really unhealthy. And I'm not sure, I still don't know where that comes from.
That's the ambition, right? You kind of need that.
You do, and
yeah.
it is drive, and you can't achieve without it. But I had an unhealthy relationship with it. It was way too defining of who I was. I was like, I can't be happy until I've achieved X, Y, Z, and they weren't even tangible things. It was almost the feeling of success. It could look like nothing to somebody else, but if I defined that as a successful moment in my life, that would be what would nourish me to live a happy life, and that isn't healthy.
So you were thinking that success was a destination as opposed to the journey.
And until you have it, you don't realize that actually it doesn't exist in any real way. And you'll always be chasing it. And that's a good thing. We should be chasing ourselves, and we should be pushing ourselves, and we should be constantly trying to better ourselves. So yeah, I learned that.
And from that amazing, and thank you for being so open.
No, it's fine.
On that story. And in a way now, in hindsight, do you feel like you had to go for it in order to achieve the successes you have now?
I think so. I think that it's interesting. You know, I learned so much about myself, not only my craft, and it made me be better on a technical level. It made me sharper, because I was like, well, I obviously have to address why I was let go from this opportunity. So I got better on that level, but I also think I understood how much being successful meant to me, and I understood that it is something that I need. Like, not everyone has that desire. Like, I have friends who they they aren't motivated by that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're happy doing other things.
Yeah. And they find they have their other
Contentment,
relationships with demons elsewhere in their lives. But I think, it was really important for me. And as much as it was difficult, I was so young.
Yes.
That it wasn't defining. Yeah. It was just hard, but it wasn't demoralizing, and I still came out of it with that kind of shred of naivety to think it is possible. It didn't completely destroy me. I just was like, I've got to work really, really fucking hard. I've got to apply myself. I've got to, make my own opportunities, and that's what I did. And I think creatively, and I guess it's the same in business as well. You try loads of different things. You don't know what's going to work. You just try, and you have to put as much energy into the things that don't work as the things that do work. And there's no real rhyme or reason as to why one works and one doesn't. It's not about the amount of hours you put in or your belief in a project or anything like that. It's just about what hits. And I was really lucky that I was 27 when My Dad Wrote a Porno happened, which is still incredibly young to have something that was so seismic in my life and changed my life in so many ways. And opened the door to so many opportunities for myself. But I think, you do have to be ready for that sort of moment as well.
I was going to say that I know being in the state where you were for 2 years and stuff is not really pleasant for anyone, right? Being clinically depressed is not... I definitely feel like there's a lot of listeners who can also relate to that.
Yeah.
But also, what I was hearing from this opportunity was that you got the opportunity to find yourself really early on.
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
Was much better than for me. I only found myself through failing much later in my late 20s, early 30s,
right.
To then discover my identity properly. So I don't know, this weird way, I feel like it's such a blessing that you had the opportunity to do it at a young age, and therefore success followed at a young age, right?
Yeah, completely. And also,
not everyone gets that.
Totally true. And I think for me as well, on a specific level of the success that I have enjoyed, My Dad Wrote a Porno. My dad wrote this book. I was really fortunate that he wrote this book, or chose to share with me this book. I don't even know when he wrote it. I'm probably writing it for years.
When did you hear his stories about this?
He told me in 2014 was when he shared the book with me, and he was like, I've been writing this in the garden shed. I didn't even know it was porn when he first... I just thought he was writing some... He was just retired, and I was like, what a great way to spend your time, Dad. Yeah. You go and be creative. You've been a builder your whole life. You've got 4 kids. You've grafted. You've put your dreams aside for everybody else. It's now your turn. Oh my God, it's porn. What the hell? You disgusting man.
What? Because he was asking to see, can you give me some feedback?
He didn't even ask for feedback. He just, he's such a troll. He just was like, I've written this. I just sent it to me, and then watched me disintegrate into myself. But I feel like I've got the,
He gave you the whole book the chapter? Or?
I have the last laugh. He gave me the first 3 chapters, and I was like, okay, this is... And also, if you're going to write it, learn to spell. Do you know what I mean? Like, have some grasp of not only the English language, but the female anatomy would be helpful. The thing about that is that he, if he'd have written that 5 years, even 2 years earlier, I wouldn't have been ready to have taken it to the place that it's taken me. And that's true of James and Alice as well. We were... our 20s were really about honing our individual skill sets, and we have very complementary skill sets, which has been really, great for our show. So I just remember thinking, and actually I did a talk at my old university the other day to the new students, and I was talking to them about how it can feel like you're just bashing your head against a brick wall for years, and you're not achieving anything, and you're not learning anything. You're treading water, or you're even going backwards at points, and it can feel really suffocating, and the self-doubt creeps in. But it's only when you come through that you realize, oh my God, all of that time I was learning so much about myself and my industry and my craft that actually is the reason that you ultimately find success, because you wouldn't have been able to do it without all of that work that you put in for all those years. You know, I'm acutely aware of that my dad wrote, or Belinda Blink, my dad's book, came into my life at a point where I was ready to take it by the reins, nothing else, and make it into something else, you know. Something.
What do you mean by ready? Like emotionally,
creatively, emotionally, technically, you know, and also, you know, podcasting was beginning to have its like renaissance, and we were very much at the sharp end of that, which, you know, is true of my whole career. You know, I was at the start of the digital revolution in storytelling, of, you know, digital content. I've been at the forefront of these emerging industries my entire career, and so kind of seeing a potential in a new medium that I thought could tell this story really well was something that I wouldn't have known without those years of struggling in.
And now you're the forefront of the podcast industry, right?
I've been very lucky that, our show's been welcomed with such open arms by people, and we've really grown with the medium, which has been really exciting to kind of see how it's evolved. And, you know, and even like shows like this, you know, it's so wonderful to kind of be a part of new podcasts and see how they're challenging the norms of expectations, and like having conversations that are really important to be having that you couldn't have on TV or in any other medium. You know, there's an intimacy to this platform that I think is really amazing, and that we should try and protect from
I love that.
the wider, you know, corporate interest for as long as possible, really.
I like what you just said, especially about protecting the authenticity of it, given that you were originally also sharing the story about how in the creative industry it's all about go, 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 go. It's all, you got to make it, everything has to be amazing, so therefore actually now using the platform to share the failures.
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
Didn't make it. Isn't that the interesting turnaround?
And it's so important to know about that. It's why this show was appealing for me to do, because it's like, it's important for people who see success to
it's
know
not
that
an overnight success.
Yeah,
it's never overnight
ever. And you know, I have a really complicated relationship with creative success. In fact, I was asked to write something for The Guardian the other day, because The Guardian guide ended, which is super sad. And they kind of asked a lot of creative people to talk about how they defined creative success in 2021. And I was just talking about how in today's society we value the perception of success more than being creatively fulfilled. You know, why does everything that we do have to be seen to be successful, even when it's not?
Newsbaity success too.
Yeah.
Right? It's got to sell headlines, right? It's like, another Mark Zuckerberg kind of success.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
As opposed to, all the grinding years that everyone has to go through.
And even when you are successful, you know, for me, making My Dad Wrote a Porno, I find way more creatively fulfilling than being in My Dad Wrote a Porno, being on it.
Yeah.
You know, people think about the spoils of success and, like, you know, the touring and the HBO show and whatever. Like,
I'm sure that was fun.
Super fun, super anxiety ridden as well. You know, for me, it's about making content and telling stories. Like, that's what I got in this industry for. That's what I am most proud of about My Dad Wrote a Porno, is that, you know, I edit the show. I craft that into a comedy show that I'm really proud of. And that's where I find the fulfillment. Not that people are like, "Oh my God, you're in My Dad Wrote a Porno. I love it." It's like, well, I love that you love it, but
they're appreciating your work.
Exactly, and that is for me the most important thing. Because when you're creating something from nothing, you know, you're a creative person and you are imagining something that doesn't exist, and it's your job to weld that into something tangible that people can enjoy. If you can do that with any modicum of success, that's incredible. Like, to take nothing and turn it into something, that is everything.
That's making an impact.
Yeah.
Right. And that again, coming full circle about you going through, you're living your identity through your work, right?
Yeah.
And that's why you're feeling so content and complete, is because people appreciate your work and therefore appreciate you, because you've worked so hard to put yourself on the map. This is me, this is my identity, and look, I'm shining and people are like that.
Yeah. And, you know, and to this day, I mean, people come up to me and say, you know, your show's really big. You could hire an editor. You could hire a producer. It's like, no, that's why I'm doing it. I'm literally doing it because I want to make it, not because I want to be like successful or famous or whatever else people think you do something for. And I just want, you know, other people out there to understand that success comes in many different guises, and it isn't always the way that you perceive it to be.
And I actually then wanted to, I mean, we've touched through this quite a lot, like how you define success.
Yeah.
And also now how, I would love to hear it from your words, how you define failure. Because I've kind of used it as a word of opportunity, but I'd love to hear how you see it.
I think that failure is like success. It's completely dependent on your perception of what it is. And success isn't the same for everyone, and failure isn't the same for everyone. It's like, you know, you can be hugely successful in something, but if it's not something that you want to do, it doesn't have as much value. Mm-hmm. And even though somebody else can be there saying, all I want to be is a CEO of a company, and they can be jealous of someone who's a CEO of a company. But if that person that is a CEO doesn't want to be a CEO and wants to, you know, be skiing in the Alps with their family, they're not going to value being a CEO as much as that person that covets being a CEO. So I think it's all completely dependent on your perception of what you want and your perception of success and failure. So for me, failure is just not quite hitting the mark that you expect of yourself. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And actually, sometimes you need to fail to succeed because they are intrinsically linked, right? Mm-hmm. You can't have one without the other. So I think it's a fine line between success and failure for me. Because people talk to me a lot about, you know, the success of My Dad Wrote a Porno, but what they really mean is, God, everyone knows about your show.
Yeah.
Not...
It's fame.
Yeah, and that isn't success.
No.
You know,
that's why a different word for it.
Yeah, well, exactly. But people kind of confuse the two, don't they? And you know, and that they think that, you know, that being known as successful is the same thing as being successful, and that isn't necessarily the truth. You know, there are loads of successful people that you've never heard of. Mm-hmm. They're no less fulfilled. They're no, you know, it's a complicated relationship, isn't it? And I feel increasingly in our society we just don't reward or value work. We value results. Yeah. And I think that's a shame, because from seeing for myself, you know, the most the stuff that I appreciate the most is the work, not the result of the work. Yeah. Because that's the hard bit, you know? Yeah. And frankly, you know, it isn't my business what people think about my show. It's not my business if you think it's funny, if you think it's not funny. All I can care about is, have I made a show that I'm proud of? Is it well produced? Am I phoning it in? Am I cutting corners? Or am I making sure that it is as good as it can be? Whether you think it's good or not is completely your business. It's not mine. And so I have that kind of weird relationship with... I have in my downstairs loo, which you've been in, I'm sure you saw, like I have my Webby-award, which was a lovely thing to be given, and I have a review from the Sunday Times, which was a 1-star review that called My Dad Wrote a Porno live, quote, the worst cultural event of the decade. And it's framed and it's sat next to my Webby because neither matter. Yeah. You know, one's lovely to get and one's, I mean, hilarious, but not, you know, the most rewarding. But actually, you can't have one without the other. Someone's going to think you're great, here's an award. Someone's going to think you're shit, here's a 1-star review, I'm going to trash you. Who cares? Like, do I think I've done a good job? Yeah, I do. I'm proud of my show. That's all that matters.
Oh, I love that. I love how self-content and assured you are. And I felt like you had to go through that journey. But I also wonder, like, to the point now, you know, is opening up and sharing failures and being transparent and honest, is that a luxury only after success? Or should we be encouraging more people to open up even before they hit the results, to share about the work?
Yeah, and I think if I was more honest with having failed or having perceived myself to have failed, I think I would have been way happier way sooner. I think I would have been able to pinpoint where my unhappiness was coming from. But, you know, it's easy to be wise after the event, and I think there is a certain amount of perspective that you do need in any context, whether it's success or failure, to really understand what that was. Because you can go through it and, and I know that I've kind of done this with the success of When I'd Wrote a Porno. There's been moments when I've kind of sleptwalked through the process and I've had to stop myself to be like, no, this will never happen again. Wake up. Like, that's amazing. Stop taking it for granted, because you can get on a roll and things happen around you, and it's important to constantly ground yourself to be like, hang on, that's amazing. We should appreciate that. And when things don't work, be like, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Let's address that and let's fix it for next time. So I think, we should always be more self-reflective generally. I don't think that's ever hurt anybody to really understand who they are and what they want and why. I think those things are really important, whether you're at the start of your journey or at the end of it.
Well, this show is called The Failure Hypothesis.
Yes.
I would love to read out the hypothesis.
Okay, I'm intrigued with it because I don't know this. So I'm intrigued by this.
Okay, so this is the hypothesis that comes out from the show. Okay. Our greatest failures are our most important experiments. Yet emotion often prevents us from examining and learning from these unexpected outcomes. There is constant pressure to celebrate success and hide failure. However, if we practice radical honesty and have the strength to be vulnerable, then we can turn our failures into a secret of our success and help others do the same. Are you a failure hypothesis believer or a skeptic?
I think I'm a believer, because ultimately the failures, when you can confront them and accept them, they make the successes sweeter. Because you've been through, there's context with which to
it's a reward.
Compare. It's like, well, I was there and I'm now here. I know that this one feels better, but I only know how good it feels because I've been there. So I would agree with that. That hypothesis, I like it.
Thank you for being a believer and a firm believer on that too.
Get it on a t-shirt. I'll wear
yeah,
it.
Exactly. Get it on a t-shirt. Quick, guys.
Merch. It's a merch opportunity. Sorry. Constantly branding the show. You need some merch. You've got to get involved. Yeah.
We'll check out the notes and the follow-ups after this podcast.
Yeah.
But actually, on that note, we've been spending a lot of time talking about your past, and thank you for sharing about the failure stories. But I can sense it, there's another journey ahead of you. What are you working towards, and what's the fun work that you're getting involved in?
There's something really exciting that I can't talk about, which I always used to laugh at people when they would say that. It's like, I can't talk about it. It's like, why? Just talk about it. But I now realise, oh no, I literally legally can't talk about it, which is so annoying. But there's some really exciting stuff that's happening with that. I'm also directing my first musical, which is a huge...
Oh, exciting!
Challenge, yeah, really exciting.
I'm a massive musical fan.
Oh,
so
cool!
You have to let me in.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. And yeah, I'm writing a couple of TV projects.
So you're writing the screenplay. You're writing everything for the musical.
I'm not writing it. I'm just directing it. So there's a few writers on it. We had our first script read through the other day with the actors, which was really exciting. So yeah, that's kind of bubbling along. I run a cabaret night in London with a friend of mine. I'm writing some TV projects. I'm busy. There's a lot going on. It's exciting though. Just any kind of creative endeavor that I can kind of get involved in is always appealing. And what's been great about My Dad Wrote a Porno is it's given me so much time and context to explore other sides of my creativity, which has been really rewarding. So
with so much success from My Dad Wrote a Porno, do you feel like there's actually quite a lot of intense pressure on the next projects that you just mentioned going to be a massive success?
I mean, yes and no. I think I'm acutely aware that I'll never have another My Dad Wrote a Porno. It's been a huge success. There is pressure because obviously, I work in an industry where the mantra is you're only as good as the last thing you did. And that is pressure because you think, some things you can't replicate. But the film director Billy Wilder once said that people aren't as good as the last thing they did. A creative person is as good as the best thing they've ever done. And I really subscribe to that. I think he's right. Because if something's good and you're proud of it, it's always good and it should always be your calling card.
And no one should ever take that away from you.
Exactly, yeah. And and to be a creative person, you have to have failures. Everyone has failures. Like, you can't please everyone all the time. And I think failures come from risk taking, and everyone should take risks.
I love it. So thank you so much, Jamie, for being on the show today. And
thanks for having
being
me.
So radically honest.
I didn't cry, which is a good thing. I thought I'd be well emotional.
Season 2 coming up. Jamie crying.
I break down because I've lost everything.
Well, thank you so much, and we will be cheering you on the sidelines as a Failure Hypothesis alumni.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
So thank you. You've been listening to The Failure Hypothesis with me, Vivian Chan. To hear other inspiring stories from unique leaders, please subscribe to The Failure Hypothesis on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A few months after recording Jamie's interview, the Failure Hypothesis caught up with him after possibly the biggest night of his career, playing the iconic Radio City Music Hall in New York on the closing night of My Dad Wrote a Porno's second world tour.
Right, so here we are in New York. The dust has settled, 24 hours, and some major hangovers later.
Oh my God, I feel awful.
I think we all do. New York doesn't sleep, so...
And neither do I, apparently.
Yeah, no, neither do many of us. So, the reason we wanted to catch up with you in New York was that the aforementioned 24 hours ago, you played Radio City Music Hall, the iconic venue. The culmination of a world tour where you've played to 85,000 people. So, the question that I want to ask you is references, been in your episode where you talk about the moment when you looked out of your window and said, I'm literally fucked. And that was not quite to the day a decade ago, but it's roughly a decade ago. A lot has happened in that time. So I wanted to ask, what is your advice to the guy who thought he was fucked when you look out for those thousands of screaming people like you did yesterday?
Wow, I mean, that's a big question, and I'm still kind of in the process of processing last night, and the whole tour, actually. It's been quite an emotional 24 hours, but I think ultimately, and it sounds like such a cliche, but just to hang on in there, but not even like in a kind of trite way, in just these things are going to happen, and actually they're supposed to happen. No one wants a career that's just full of highs. Like, you do need those low moments to really crystallize in your mind what it is that you want to do and what you want to achieve, because I think when you're riding high and you've got success, not that you take it for granted, but it's way easier to just kind of zone out of what's got you there, and I think it's what gets you there that makes you appreciate it and will get you there the next time. So I think with me kind of breaking down in my bedroom 10 years ago, I probably would just say, this is really bad. Properly analyze why this has happened, learn from it, make sure it never happens again, and just keep pushing yourself. Don't let this define you. It was like one job, who cares? You'll have a million of them. And make sure that you continue to be creative and have ideas, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and even though sometimes you'll get knocked back, hopefully there'll be that one thing that you don't get knocked back on and it takes off and you are able to achieve things that you never even imagined that you could achieve. So
And has this redefined failure for you? Does this the culmination of a world tour, still the podcast, even though you haven't released an episode in quite a while, still in the charts. This is a peak moment for you. Has it redefined failure for you? Does it have pressure? Does it create more pressure for the next project? Because I know, for example, it was recently announced that you're directing a musical. Does it create more pressure, or is it like, I've actually got that under my belt and that liberates me now to just have complete creative freedom going forward?
I think so. I think it's nice to know that for you to know in yourself that you can do something and you've got a track record and that you've proved it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're literally getting brunch the day after Radio City. But also for other people to kind of see that you've been able to do something. And I think all people need is to see that you have delivered and created something that can bring an audience. And it's just a good piece of work. And I think I feel really excited about the next stage of my career, absolutely. And you know, and failure is going to be part of it. And there's going to be things that I work on that won't work, and that's fine. I think I'm less afraid of failure now because it really doesn't have to define you. And ultimately, you do. It's a cliche, but you learn so much more from the things that don't go right than the things that do.
That's what the show's all about. And
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jamie. It was incredible to see you along with the many other thousands there. I can't think of a stronger testament to the power of podcasting as a business, as a creative platform than what I witnessed yesterday. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being on the show, podcast royalty, hopefully the first of many. So thank you, Jamie.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks. And if you want to get a laugh, Google Radio City Music Hall, My Dad Read a Porno, because we did defile the entire Midtown
this is
Manhattan.
True. As tweeted by Questlove.
Yeah, what the hell is that? Just listen to it, Quest. You'll love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The Failure Hypothesis, a Maleggio digital production. To find out more about making and appearing in business content with interest, visit our website at maleggio.digital.com.